What's going on? I am joined by legendary coach of countless MMA and UFC champions, Mr. AKA himself, Javier Mendez. How are you, sir?
I'm good, Eddie. How are you? Thanks for having me on.
I'm doing well. Thank you for asking. Man, I'm sure you have countless stories that are just incredible. You've been around the game for so long. I mean, you name them and you probably have coached them at one point. I We're talking BJ Penn, Frank Shamrock, Luke Rockhold, Khabib Nurmagomedov, DC, Daniel Cormier, Cain Velasquez. I mean, the list goes on and on and on and on. Um, Aside from being coached by you, what would you say is the common denominator amongst those champions? Like, what is one thing that they all had in common aside from your tutelage?
Mental. The well, no, that includes the tutelage that I gave him. So um now you hit me with the tough question.
Right away, coming out swinging.
You come out, I like no one's ever asked me a question that just stumped me. You just stumped me. I'm like, okay, because it all leads to okay, Habib. Off the bat, I knew his tenacious, his just approach, his grappling style would just never back up, keep coming forward. That with him, Luke Rockhold, his enormous talent. Cain Velasquez, enormous talent. Let's see, BJ Penn. He was a scrapper. You know, he was a scrapper. He was a scrapper, and let's see. In DC was the coach. He was the wrestling guy that used wrestling to the best ability with street fighting, more or less. Um, who else we talk about? You said,
Oh man, there's too
uh,
many to name, honestly.
yeah,
Like
yeah,
it's
yeah, yeah, yeah. It
if
stumped me on that one. I didn't even think I hit the correct answer on this one.
I mean, it's all good. It's just, what there has to be something in common with all these champions. But I mean, maybe it's just you. Maybe you're the common denominator that kind of puts all the pieces together the way they're supposed to be. I mean, AKA American Kickboxing Academy. When you started this, did you ever think that you would be training or end up training some of the very best grapplers on the planet?
Never, never. I never, no, never, never. And it all started with Frank Shamrock, and you know what? I just mentioned, you mentioned Frank Shamrock, and I'm hitting Frank Shamrock. Okay, the one thing that stood out about Frank was the mental, and I guess that's what stands out with all the guys. They're mentally super strong. They know what they want, and they're willing to sacrifice whatever it takes to get that. So mental is what they all had. They all had that attribute, strong mentality.
Yeah, you definitely have to have that. And like with Khabib, you mentioned how he was always coming forward. He's always been someone that has been tremendously well prepared for his matchups. Is that something he learned at AKA, or is that something that he brought with him when he arrived?
He brought that with him. I just sharpened it. His father was his main tutor. I sharpened them around. I look at it like this, like a beautiful house, right? I came in, I go, oh, that house will look good with this color or these color shades or this chandelier here or that chandelier. So I just made the house prettier, but his father made that house. I just went and decorated the house to make it more attractive. That's the
That's
way I can
fair.
put it.
That's absolutely fair. And of course, you spent a lot of time with Khabib, the Nurmagomedovs, Abdulmanap, may he rest in peace. What would you say was the biggest takeaway from spending so much time with the Dagestani culture?
Uh, their dedication to each other, family. I mean, after training, they're all going to each other's house to go eat. One day they're here, one day they're there. They're all bonded together. There's not, hey, I'm coming over. They just show up unannounced. They're just showing up and they're there eating and they're a family, man. They are a bond that cannot be broken, and that's why I love those guys because when I'm with those guys, you feel the love, you feel the genuine love for you and care for you with these guys. I haven't met one of them that didn't have that, and that's what makes them special. They're just their bond with each other.
Yeah, it seems to be a recipe for success. Do you try to bring some of that with you to AKA now? Do you kind of, I'm sure it's always been sort of a family, but do you maybe emphasize that, maybe set not rules, but certain guidelines that, hey, if you want to train at AKA, you have to follow these certain parameters if you want to train here?
We did adapt a tiny bit when I went down to Dagestan and I watched what they were doing. We came over here and we adapted a little bit. I will say more was taken from me over there to create what they have now than I took from what I got, because we already had more or less how to put the total. I've been working on bringing the total picture for 20 something years. So I was ahead of the game, and so more was taken from here than was taken from over there. But what I took from over there was their ground was incredible, and they spend a lot of time on the ground, and that's why beating them on the ground is virtually almost impossible. Not impossible, but it's very difficult to beat a Dagestani guy from that region, the Habib gym, to beat them on the ground. Very difficult.
Probably one of the hardest things in combat sports to date. I'll say that.
I I would say that too.
You've been around the game, like you said, over 20 years, perfecting the craft. What ways has it changed, though? Do you kind of stick to the old ways? You dance with the one that brought you and stick to your traditional ways, or are there like cryo chambers in the gym and water treadmills and all these new technological advances and things like that? Or
There's always new changes, and you got to be willing to accept new changes all the time, because if you don't accept the new changes, you become a dinosaur, and your ways are old ways, they're not going to work. So if we didn't adapt to the new ways and new ways of thinking and taking care of your body, then we wouldn't be where we're at. We're still relevant in the team standings in the world, because we're on top of the things that need to be done, and we keep changing, we keep evolving. Because if we don't, we're going to fall behind. You cannot, you look. I just was watching 1993, The Ultimate Fighter with Hoist Gracie when they were the first one on there, and I was watching it and I was going, "Wow, how much we didn't know back then, right? And how much we know more now than they did then. It's
oh
crazy.
yeah,
It is
can you
crazy." But
imagine
yet,
a Daniel Cormier or a Cain Velasquez or Khabib in UFC 1 or 3? Like that'd be criminal, right?
it would be criminal, and it's just the beautiful thing that the Gracies brought this to the whole world, because without them and their style, which was dominant above any style, singular style, but they brought this to the world, and they showed that without Gracie Jiu-Jitsu, your style isn't going to beat that style. Very difficult to
Yeah,
beat. Very difficult. You have to
absolutely.
have their style. You have to have their style to integrate with your style in order to be able to be competitive. And that's what is shown. And look where we're at now. I mean, you got kids now that are 4 years old starting their journey, whereas before, it
Mhm.
would be the best guys would be the collegiate guys, after Division I wrestlers, this and that. Well, guess what? The new generation isn't going to be the collegiate guys. It's going to be the kids that started when they were 4 years old, that did
Mhm.
kickboxing, that did boxing. There's a fighter, I believe, with Mayweather's gym that I just read about. It was like 16 years old. I forgot the name, but he's like a national boxing champion, kickboxing champion, and a wrestling champion at 16.
Wow.
If unless I read it incorrectly, but I'm sure I did it. And he has submission wins everywhere, this and that. That's
That's
the
awesome.
new breed, and it's getting to the point where the little guys now are the future. It isn't. Oh, I got the Olympian. Well, there's going to be a point where that Olympian is a little too old to start MMA.
For real. Yeah, absolutely. Um, have you talked to Cain Velasquez lately? How's he doing? Has he been in the gym at
He's
all training?
he's in the gym all the time. He's coaching with me. Is beautiful to have him here. He's got so much wealth, so much information, such a great heart, and great caring person that he loves coaching and he loves giving back to the kids. He goes out of his way. He's here about 4 days a week. In the
Oh
morning,
wow.
and then
That's
he
awesome.
comes here at night. He comes here at night and runs the bike training with the guys. He's a huge inspiration for the guys. I'm so blessed to have him with me here. I'm so blessed.
Yeah, that's incredible. Would you say he changed in any way from the incident that happened? Has it changed just his outlook on life? I mean, of course it had to have, but what ways have you noticed that it's changed?
He hasn't changed at all. He's still same old Cain. He's still the Cain that you can trust, the Cain that you believe in, the Cain that you love. Hasn't changed at all. Same Cain, you know.
So with
All you can do is love him. You can't nothing but love and respect for who he is and what he does.
100%. And honestly, I love the outcry of support he got from the martial arts community. That warmed my heart. That was really good to see. Well, John Jones, you know him very well. You've coached against him. Huge rivalry with DC. He is the heavyweight champion now. So, of course, we have to play what if. So I got to ask, prime Cain Velasquez versus heavyweight John Jones. Who wins and how?
Well, that would be John Jones' toughest fight. And I would have to say I'm biased 100% because Cain's my guy. But that would be his toughest fight because he's got somebody that's got the cardio. He's got somebody that can strike. He's got somebody that can wrestle. He's got somebody that can kick. He's got somebody that is very formidable in all areas. A prime Cain Velasquez would be virtually unstoppable, you know. But unfortunately for him, his kryptonite was injuries. You know, injuries plagued him. Even with the Ngannou situation, when he fought Ngannou, he got hit in the back of the head. And as he got hit in the back of the head, his knee went out, you know, and there goes the end of the fight. So it's kind of like injury, you know, it's like injury after injury, you know. I think personally that stopped him from being the greatest heavyweight of all time, injuries, you know, because outside of that, I think Cain Velasquez would have been the greatest heavyweight of all time. As it is now, he's just a great heavyweight, but not the greatest, no way.
That's fair. That's definitely fair. Well, let's quickly mention safebettingsites.com. That's who hooked up this interview here. Do you ever bet on fights yourself? Is that a thing?
No, I never bet on fights. I get too nervous. I watch for fun. I don't, you know.
Well,
no.
Let's say you were betting. We got a BMF title on the line. It's not a real title, but it's, I guess, fun for the audience or whatever. Justin Gaethje is taking on Justin Gaethje, Dustin Poirier 2. Who is taking that one? Who would you put your money on?
That's a real tough fight. And I had mentioned before, very slight edge to Dustin. Very slight. Not a big edge whatsoever. Right? That's one of those ones. Just close your eyes, put your money on red or black. There's really, you know,
right.
It's such a tough fight. They're both so skilled. They're both great fighters. It's one of those ones where if you're not betting, because you're going to watch a great fight. If you are betting, yeah, hold on to your seats because you may be winning. You have the fight, then all of a sudden you don't. You know, that's how this fight's going to play
emotional
out,
roller coaster.
Roller coaster. And you know how, I mean, think about between those guys, how many fight of the nights have they had together? Quite a bit. Yeah. They couldn't put up a better. Yeah, it's perfect fight of the night material for sure, and main event material for sure.
Before I get you out of here, I got to know. So, of course, Islam Makhachev needs an opponent, right?
Yeah.
Winner of Gaethje Poirier 2, that's an option. Charles Oliveira just did his thing against Beneil Dariush. That's an option, right? But what about potentially moving up to 170 and competing for the welterweight title? Have you discussed that with Islam?
No, I haven't discussed it, but I did read about it today, where Islam says, "Hey, you know, Leon, let's go." You know, so I did read on his Twitter that he is interested. If nothing comes through, he's interested in that fight. You know, but I think Leon has Colby Covington, and you don't know what's going to happen from that. So I don't think that's going to happen. And then I heard Alex just had surgery. It's minor elbow surgery. So who knows? Maybe he'll come for that. That'd be great if he could. But, you know, I'm sure he'd want a better camp preparation for Islam. And then Charles. Well, let's look at Charles. I mean, Charles hasn't said anything other than he wouldn't be ready till November, December, but he wants it in Brazil, right? But he doesn't get to choose, right? So maybe the UFC works it out with him. I don't know. I don't know exactly how that would play out. But and then the thing with Dustin and Justin, are they going to be healthy enough to get ready after what they're going to go through? I mean, you got to be realistic, you know. It isn't like these guys are going to be, you know, unless it's a quick finish.
Yeah.
See that, but if not, man, that's going to be tough, man. I don't know. Let's see what happens with the winner of that, and I'm sure there's going to be a high interest in the winner of that taking on Islam. And I don't think, personally speaking, the UFC is going to make any decision until that fight takes place. That's what I think.
Fair enough. Well, Javier Mendez, thank you so much for taking out the time to speak with me. I don't know if there's a coaching Hall of Fame. If there is, you are first ballot Hall of Famer, hands down, without question. Thank you so much for dedicating your life to the sport of MMA or combat sports in general, and best of luck to you in the future.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
Thanks, Eddie.